Move to approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
I have a comment.
Oh,
Okay. Roman numeral 7. Treasurer's report.
6.
Um,
7, yeah.
yeah, the very bottom of the page. Old funds based on research from previous board president. I believe it should be a prior board president, not the previous. I know because he was several presidents ago.
Are you in
It
the,
would be the previous
oh,
board.
you're in the minutes?
Yeah, is that word? Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
it-
I'm sorry.
it's okay. It's okay.
I'm not awake.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is,
That
they were,
that is okay.
they were just going over the, it's approving the agenda.
So where are we?
Never mind.
All right.
Okay. Was eager to get to it.
Yeah, really.
Okay, never mind. I'm fine with the
Yeah,
agenda.
that's fine. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved? And now we can turn to the March minutes. I have an amendment, but if you could proceed with yours.
It is the previous president. It was Jim right before Michael, so it is previous. That is correct.
But it's Tressa now. So the previous would be Michael.
Michael, you're right. Let's see here. It is, yeah, so yeah, it just had to be a prior, and no problem accepting that, I think.
Change that word. So a prior.
Yes.
Yeah,
President.
that makes sense.
And you had welcome, Dorothy.
Dorothy?
What was your,
See, under action items on page 3, it just has my name floating as a letter D. I believe I was the one who initially made the motion for the fund balance policy, but just has my name listed on
Hmm.
a single line,
okay,
single line.
so we need to add move to approve there. Or motion. And other, yeah.
You have no further changes.
So I move to approve the April minutes with the amendments of adding the letter A in section 7A. So it reads from a previous board president.
No, sorry. A prior.
Prior.
Okay, yes, so a prior board president. And then the second amendment would be Roman numeral 7, B, I, D, to say move to approve Jay Johnston. Period.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I believe next we have celebrations.
To celebrations. Congratulations to Elizabeth Davis, who could not be here today. Elizabeth works at Leonardtown and is a real spark plug for programming and just generally working the library. And she has been with us for 10 years. Congratulations, Elizabeth. And we do have a number of hip hip hoorays today for Katie Daly, Emma Rollinson, Hannah Bear, Allison Guy, Annie Cross, Naomi Cole, Morgan Butler, Rita Baldwin, and Brittany Cornish. So if you look over there, you'll see that those tables might not look like they did the last time you were here, nor do the chairs. That's because they're new. And we're very grateful to the county commissioners for providing us for upgrades for the meeting rooms here at Charlotte Hall and at Lexington Park. And so we've got a great new AV system, very clear camera, unfortunately. I always hate seeing the back of my head. And very nice new, lovely new furniture. So congratulations and thank you so very much. Your certificates are out there and being distributed.
All right. As we move on to the president's report. Right here, the approval of the monthly expense ledger.
I'll move to approve the monthly expense ledger.
I second.
All right. I just had one quick question on page 4. where it says, the second item, Acrobat license, is that Adobe Acrobat?
That is Adobe Acrobat, yes. So we have to make pretty heavy use of that, and then we do then have to license it. Unfortunately, there is a free version, but if you're going to do any real work with PDFs, you need a license.
Yeah, personal experience with it. So, the name of the vendor, it doesn't go to Adobe directly?
That's just who we got it through, but yeah.
Okay.
Michael, I'm online.
What was it?
Other questions?
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Belinda?
I have a question if I may.
Are we doing Belinda?
Yeah, so Belinda, can you talk about the Acrobat license?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, John, just to answer your question, we go through a vendor that we use for all of our IT things. They give us a discount.
So yes, it goes to Adobe, but yeah, so.
All right. More-
On
Please,
page
Belinda's volume.
2, I see 4 entries for a history grant program presenter, which total up to a pretty tidy sum. Can somebody explain that for me, please?
Can do that for you, John.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so that is all paid for by a grant.
That's-
They got a
That's
grant to
outside money
bring,
then.
yes, and they got a
Okay.
grant to bring in history programming. There were several presenters. They're all from the Piscataway tribe. So they were each billed separately.
All right, thank you.
And we thank the Maryland 2050 for that grant.
I have a question on page 3. On April 16th, the books and processing fees, is that amount correct?
I'm sorry, what's your question?
On
Yeah,
16th on page
April
3?
16th, yes, the books and processing fees, what was the question about them?
Is that amount correct?
Yes,
I mean, it should.
Dorothy, we pay several bills at once.
yeah.
We pay multiple
it's all
bills.
It's all to Ingram, but that's for many, many items. It's not, a single thing. That will be hundreds of books.
And it's an entire month to a month and a half of bills. We pay a month's worth of bills at once.
I thought it was usually different.
Are there any further questions? Yeah, I believe we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. And the treasurer's report, the notation here, Judith, does this mean won't have one until July?
Yeah, that's just a placeholder. I leave it just to make sure I don't forget.
All right. Next is the Smurler report from me. The only action that the Smurler board has taken in the past month is an online one, we did it because it was requests from all 3 of the libraries to use it's, some grant money to make up for the federal funding shortfall and to do with the is it ILMS? Is that right?
Mhm.
Yep, and having to do with that shortfall, and we did that last week.
So Smurla money is going to fill in the gap?
Yes.
Well, I'll have some news on that for you in a couple minutes.
Okay, yeah, I figured you would have more of the details as it pertains to our board. All right, and the next would be director's report.
Okay, well, so we'll begin with looking at the fiscal year 25 budget review, and I've got some good budget news for you. The LSTA money has been reinstated. So that money is paying for items at the Lexington Park Makerspace, and it's paying for staff development. So for example, we sent several staff to the Maryland Library Association conference, and that money is going to be paying for that. So we have submitted the reimbursements. We haven't received it yet, but we will be getting our LSTA money. More LSTA news when we start talking about the fiscal year 26 budget. But so we are putting the money that Smyrla is going to be giving us towards more digital content, specifically in Overdrive, looking at permanent licenses. So that money is going to be put to good use, and we're very grateful for Smyrla for the financial aid. Other than that, just a couple notes on the budget document for fiscal year 25. You'll see that 83% of the year has elapsed. That's as of April 30th. So it's not including May expenses. You'll see that we're looking pretty good on salaries, but not quite so good on our health insurance costs. With the exception of Leonardtown, we're already over in each one of those. The good news is that if you look and see, there's the health clinic admin fees. We had set aside $10,000 for that. And that's being paid for with the health refund we got. So that $10,000 will cover the overage, and we will have more money to put there, as I'll review with you in a couple of minutes, for next year.
So can you help me out here on
Mhm.
this? Is that overage, is that driven by insurance costs going up? Or is it driven by
It is
a
driven
deteriorating
by,
health situation?
it's not by health at all. It's driven by eligible employees adding to our insurance.
Uh-huh.
So when a life-changing event happens, somebody who didn't previously insure us could add. A new employee comes on board full-time, they're eligible to add, and that's what's happened there. We are in the open enrollment period now, so we won't know until the end of this month exactly what the costs for next year are going to be. We are anticipating at least 2 people who have not been getting insurance through us adding insurance. So we know those costs are going to be higher next year. In some cases, it's because people who previously as a family may have insured through the base are switching over to the library.
And when somebody leaves our employment, does it drop back down correspondingly?
It will depend. If the person who replaces them wants insurance, then no.
Okay.
But otherwise, yes, it would. So we, we know that insurance is exceptionally important for people and it's a great benefit. So I would anticipate eligible employees simply continuing to increase.
And are our premiums, are they structured based on age, gender, or is it just a flat head count?
It's a flat head count and that goes through the county. So it really depends on the level. So there's different levels one can take. And then also, is it individual? Is it a couple? Is it a family? The costs go up, obviously, if it's a family. And we can anticipate for a family insurance being $15,000 a year for a family, 18,000. It's not cheap. But it is, as I say, a great benefit. And we're very fortunate that the county allows us to go with them because there's no way we could insure on our own.
Thank you.
So, I mean, employees always come and go. That's a regular thing to take in consideration, but I understand if there's change of life circumstances.
Mhm, yeah.
But, okay, so we're running at $42,000 a month. And we have
Roughly, yeah.
2 more months left. That's $84,000. And we're at 470. So it would put us up to 550. Right? Is I'm calculating it's like we would be over by 550 unless you take off the 10,000 for the clinic. We've been at 540.
They're going to take off the 10,000 for the clinic.
So a $40,000, we should expect that, which would require a reprogramming.
we'll have to see at the end of the year where we are. And we're hopeful that that $10,000 will cover the remaining amount. We'll just have to see where we are. And if we go under, then at the end of the year, you'll have to do a budget reconciliation.
I mean, I mean, it's 42,000 a month. I don't know how the 10,000 could make up that
Can I-
difference.
Can I say that something?
Sure, jump in.
Our bill is approximately $40,000 to $50,000, and then it's offset by the premiums that our employees pay. So the bill itself is more around 30,000 for us. And then also in addition, I have to double check, but I pay insurance at the end of the prior month. So the May bill may already be in that cost. So then it would only be one more bill for this fiscal year, but I'd have to double check that.
So
But we
did
should get
say-
pretty close to having all of it covered within the budgeted amount. But again, if not, we'll pull from either salaries or some other place. I pull from salaries first because personal expenses is grouped with, health insurance is grouped with the salaries for the most part.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Well, Madam Treasurer, I'm kind of lost in the numbers, but it seems to me we ought to consider moving money now. If the balance is 31 and how much per month?
The money is all there. It's just, it doesn't, as far as the lines, I'd rather move the money when we know how much to move because we pay from one stock amount. The lines just help us keep within a budget for each item.
Right, we have one fund that we're paying everything from, basically, except for grants and things.
Yeah.
So we'll get that possibly a reprogramming.
Yeah, at
request,
the
and
end of
that's
each,
kind of like a,
yeah, at the
an
end of
accounting
each year,
exercise.
you'll recall you do a budget reconciliation where some things are down and other things are not, and move money appropriately to cover the shortfalls at the end of the year. So looking back at the monthly expenses, there were 2 health insurance bills paid during this period. So it could very well be, and Belinda will check for you, that May is already covered. So we'll just have June remaining incredibly enough. I don't anticipate that being too far down. If we look over on page 2, good news there, as I've already shared with you via email. While Waste Management did pull out a contract and say, we've got 2 more years, we did renegotiate with them. They went down to the rate that their competitor would have paid. So it'll be saving $1,000 a month there, and which is good news for the future.
Sorry, Michael, which branch was that?
Lexington Park. On page 3, the mobile library appears to be greatly under the expected budget. That's nice. It will, as we're gearing up for summer, we'll be doing programming expenses there and getting some more supplies for the vehicle. So those numbers will be spent down some, but I'm very happy that the fuel costs are nothing like we anticipated. It's a big old vehicle, but that diesel's pretty darn efficient. It does get a lot of miles, but so we will be looking next year at those and adjusting. But it is not surprising since this is, like a first kind of full fiscal year and that sort of thing that we got it. So on page 4, you'll see under insurance listed at 28%. That is going to be an expense. We pay the insurances in June for the upcoming year. So that's various board insurances mostly. So for example, if somebody sues the board, we've got insurance for $1 million. that kind of thing. So we will be spending that amount down. The vehicle maintenance is at 99%, but it's only total of $500. We unfortunately had a mouse build its nest in the, not the mobile library, but the library van's air filter, which was odoriferous, but it's straightened out now. So, but yes. The amounts in the furniture and equipment, the line just below that, do now include the final payments for the upgrades to the AV systems. There's still a little bit of money there for some very furnishings, that sort of thing. And we would like to go ahead and spend all of that. On page 6, you see the county funding and the state funding. It's up to date. We will not be getting the final payments for the year until early June. So our budget's going to be a bit lean until those come in. And then we won't necessarily be able to spend all of them, but it'll all come out in the budget. So we'll just have to sort of see where we are at the end of the year. Notice at where it says account, the very sort of last two lines, their use of fund balance, $100,000. We had budgeted $100,000 possibly out of the fund balance this year. We haven't gone into that so far. This year, for the first time in a long time, we may actually dip into the amount budgeted. I guess we've done that a couple times. May dip into that amount, but it's certainly not going to be $100,000, I don't think. One thing driving that will be that over the years, we've built up a fair amount of Friends of the Library money, and we are trying to spend all that out this year. So that it doesn't carry over for the next budget year and look like it's some sort of an asset. So that may be part of it, but it's not really sort of like the library's general fund is that much over expense. It's that we are trying to use up some of those FOL funds. Do you have any questions about any of it?
Just to be sure I'm tracking with what you just said on page 6, the last dollop of money from the state will come in June. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Does that still mean that the county and we are kind of like every other month out of sync?
Well, we get money from the county and the state at the same time. And so the last payment from county and state is going to be either really late May or early June.
And then we will get the next one from either or both of them.
It'll be next fiscal year.
Yes, but in which month?
I believe that's September. No, June. No.
It's
July or
Michael.
August.
Michael, we get a letter from them and when they give us our budget and they tell us when that first one will be, it's generally the very last week of July or the first week of August that they promise it, but they're often a little late for that first payment.
Yeah, so we don't yet know, as Lynn just said, they'll send us a letter saying, here's what, I don't know what that was. Here's when your money's coming. And so we don't know exactly, but as Belinda just said, think really late July or early August.
Okay, so we do then have a little bit of a dead spot going into the new fiscal year with regard to cash flow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It can skew the audit just a little bit because they say, well, the end of June you had this. Well, we got money in early June. And so it didn't necessarily a chance to, have all that spent out, but we will, I don't think it's going to be a problem for us other than sometimes we have to hold back on paying bills until money comes in. Other questions about the budget?
On the SMERLA grant, John, you just said SMERLA voted to, is it this $15,000 or is it a different amount of money? that you were?
What I can do is I can pull out the email where it explains exactly what we did if you.
Okay, and then my part two of the question is there any timeline on this grant money? If we don't spend it this fiscal year, do we carry it over? Do we have to give
No.
it back? Is there?
No, we, on any grant, we spend and get reimbursed typically. But it is based on fiscal year. So if we don't spend that money, we will not get it.
Judith, this is
Yes.
Belinda. Are you talking about the SMRLA grant tuition reimbursement that's in that budget? Because that's different than what John's talking about.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Sorry. Could you speak a little slower?
Sorry. Are you asking about the SMRLA grant that's on the budget sheet?
Yes.
Okay, that is different than what John is talking about.
Okay.
So the
That's
SMRLA
our-
grant
okay.
on the budget sheet is actually our tuition reimbursement. And all of our staff are finishing their spring semester right now, and we'll be requesting the last of that within the next few weeks. When
Okay,
they
and
turn in
so-
their forms.
And so there's a timeline on the money. We have to spend it this fiscal year.
Yes,
Okay.
And we
what you're
will.
saying is that it will be spent, yes.
What I was referring to was the remaining hotspot funding,
Yeah.
to allow the 3 counties. And what my records have, like that that comes to this board would be for mobile library maintenance and overdrive funding. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. So, other questions about it? All right, well then we'll move right along here to what's happening in your library. I'll try to make this fairly brief because there's a lot going on in your library. But for admin, the public budget hearing, I think, was fantastic for us. I don't know if you watched some of the clips, where I set out, well, here's where somebody was talking. That wasn't everybody who spoke for the library, but I think it was kind of the ones that really hit home with personal stories. And we, I think, have to be very happy with the results of the budget. In a very tough year, thank you to the county commissioners for looking out for the library. We went in flat funded, but they did end up giving us $394,000 more for next year. I frankly was not expecting to get that much, but it is a number that we gave them and they were able to meet that. So with the additional about 26,000, we'll get above and beyond what we get this year from the state. I think about $420,000 more. That's sounds like a lot of money. It's not. It was for increases in the insurance, increases in utilities, where we are going to go over what we had anticipated this year. $70,000 for materials, and they kept talking about digital, but the cost of books has gone up quite a bit the last 5 years, and we hadn't really done a lot with increasing the book budget. So frankly, I'm looking at putting a fair amount of that into getting more new books, which will help with circulation. And then, at the end of the day, they go to the Friends and we are able to often see new, popular books get sold at the book sale. So I think in some ways that will be where some money is going to go. But we're giving you a budget next month for your approval. I don't know if any of you bothered to read an article I'm having published in June. Digital increasingly is not a good deal for libraries. That's very unfortunate, but it is a reality. So, but some of it will go there. But then there is money set aside for staff. We'll be looking at all our expenses and using what we can for staff. We just don't yet know what the figures are going to look like, but we're very grateful.
Do you mean COLA? Wasn't a COLA talked about on that?
It It was for a COLA and STEP.
Right.
Um, but we'll have to look and see what that's going to cost. And
In what kind of COLA are we talking about? Were you running different numbers, 2%?
we'll be running different
3%?
numbers. We don't yet know what the budget will allow. We'll be coming to you probably with a couple of suggestions. I'd like to front load it as much as possible and give everybody as much as we can early. But this year, for example, we went back to a policy of giving the step on the anniversary of employment just because that's something we could afford. We'll have to look and see how the money's going to get sent out. We would like to do steps and not just COLA. Steps give people who are at the library longer a bit of an edge over time, um, as opposed to everybody just getting a jump up. So we'll be coming back to you with figures then. We did begin the process for trustee applications, and we'll be talking about that later today.
Michael, before you move on, I really appreciate the update about the budget. And I just want to note, our gratitude to the commissioners as well as the members of the public who came out and supported the library. And it's amazing to see this exceptional outcome.
Yeah, we asked some people to come out and just tell their stories, and they did. And I was very moved, and I think they all did a better job than I did. um, to hear those personal stories, including people say the library literally saved my life. I mean, you can't get better than that.
Wow.
It was encouraging that folks came out, particularly since the crowd was dominated by mostly people supporting the school system. Make sure our voices were heard
Which
too.
we also love. We also love the
absolutely.
schools.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, not that I'm competitive or anything, but we did get 52 letters of support for the library. And the next closest one got 3. So I think that we have ample evidence that we're a very beloved institution in the county. Charlotte Hall, new meeting room tables and chairs, and they kicked off the 75th anniversary with behind the scenes tours. So we're starting to ramp that up very sort of small. Most of the big celebrations for that are going to be in the fall. At Leonardtown, there's new furniture arrival. There's display tables. We had a first showing of Free for All, the public library documentary with local historians there. 75th anniversary tours there, and we had quite a few grant-funded programs. For example, the resilience of the Piscataway people, colonial culture clashes with Eastern North America, and journey through indigenous art. Very happy to have those. We had a great sculpture program where Paran, who did the murals out in front of the Leonardtown Library, those kind of monolithic tile sculptures, came and taught people how to do that. Lexington Park, successful 75th anniversary behind the scenes tours. We had more successful history and pottery events there at Solderly with makerspace materials. And we had quite a few people come out to the sustainability fair, 206 people. Mobile Outreach had a very successful April. They had 13 events in addition to 19 story times. So that included college fairs, community festivals and fairs, a computer class held at St. Mary's Caring Soup Kitchen. We did 26 regular stops and a one-time event in partnership with Historic Solderly and the Master Gardeners, April 14th, Birds, Bees, and Butterflies, that's brought out 108 people. That's the highest month of mobile library circulation so far. In terms of programming, we had 20 total across 4 branches for spring break alone, with 718 people attending. So that was a very busy week at the library. And so quite a lot going on at your library. We have submitted a TEDCO grant for the Lexington Mark Makerspace. That's a matching grant. Whatever we come up with, they'll give us that amount again. Fingers crossed that will come through. So far, about $70,000 Okay. So we've got that and we're hoping for a match from TEDCO for it.
You
Is
said
that
Petco?
100% match?
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry, go ahead.
Is that match 100%?
Yeah, they'll,
Unlimited?
ideally, they're going to match sort of what we have.
You said TEDCO,
TEDCO, yeah.
but it's not a guarantee. We have to
No, no,
apply.
it's applied through a grant, yeah.
You have to, and be approved.
Yes.
So not guaranteed, but
Yeah, we do have the people at Patuxent Partnership who have connections with TEDCO speaking for us. So we're fingers crossed.
Bonnie.
Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, we're submitting another grant, the Claire Friedlander grant for an arts lab. So again, we'll, these are kind of one-time things, but we hope to kick them off that way. So lots going on at your library. Any questions about any of that?
When you say a one-time thing, that's to do what?
To put in an art lab at Lexington Park. So you'd need supplies, you'd need, the ability to have especially young people come in and do art projects, and that would give the funding for it.
So that's basically startup money.
Yeah.
Then what do you anticipate the ongoing cost to be?
Well, we don't know those figures yet, but I would anticipate not being particularly expensive.
For the art lab in particular, we would be looking at some capital costs for building another class room within the library, kind of like we were planning for the makerspace. And so we're anticipating an arts lab using found and donated materials, somewhat like Anne Marie Garden's art lab that they have in their space.
And
We do annually get money from the Arts Council, so I would imagine that will probably be where that money will go to.
And do we have any issues with restructuring the space as far as the county's concerned, it being their building?
It's going to require a lot of partnership with them to go forward with that. We've had some preliminary discussions about just, what are the possibilities? And so we would just be continuing to talk to them about what can we do structurally, what is not going to work well, and kind of build it from there.
All right, thank you.
I would just note the mobile library team is doing a great job. When they were at St. Mary's College, it was really fun to see them working with the students, getting the students library cards. The students were really excited about it. And there's just a real buzz building, and the team is doing a great job cultivating that. So it's really gratifying to see.
And speaking of the mobile library, a couple months ago, we had a very nice update on reallocation of the stops based on usage. Has there been any more development along those lines?
No, we're trying these stops that we have currently. And it's not like that's going to be a monthly thing. We'd like to see a 6-month trend. If you have a new stop, it takes time to get established. So I would anticipate looking at it again probably after the summer.
And Michael Dunn, I'd like to go back to one of your comments. I think given the budget situation with the county this year, I would suggest that we do about a 2-paragraph thank you letter to the commissioners in general for all of our signatures. Let them to know it's not grabbing the money and run. We really do appreciate it.
It's a good idea.
Well, I've already sent them thank you, and the library is going to be releasing via social media and our website and letters out to emails out to our users. Thank you. They're going to hear in great detail how grateful we are. Okay, well, speaking of buildings, here we sit in Charlotte Hall, and if at the end of this you'd like to walk around with me and hear about some things, I will happily, Okay. I will happily walk around with you and point out some of the physical locations, but we have started the RFP process. It's a county RFP. It's not a library RFP to do the renovation on Charlotte Hall. That will be released on July 1. And The county, again, is in charge of that process, but it's an RFP for an architect. Until such time as an architect signs off on these things, none of this is official. So draft, draft, draft. But so we've reviewed what that's going to look like, and as I say, we're currently doing that. But you have in front of you a very rough sketch of this building that includes the, what's going on here? That includes the, stop that microphone. That includes the Smyrla space and the library space. The library space is currently marked with kind of a red pen. So one thing we definitely want to do, and this will depend all on funding, but right now we've got about $300,000 to initially kick the project off, hire the architect, get a construction schedule, get construction estimates. We're going to need all of that by next spring in order to apply for state capital grant funding, and we're going to ask for $2 million. So the front area, which is currently like a little courtyard, that green line at the bottom right here, we're going to enclose the courtyard. That's definitely something we want to do. Now, that's going to become the new lobby. And the restroom facilities will open out into the lobby. We'll just move the doors, basically. What is currently the lobby is going to become a staff work area. Now, the next thing I'd like to go to is something that's not definite. We want to do it, but we have to negotiate with Smyrla. That part on the bottom right that is in blue, that's currently in Smyrla's space. It's a training lab. And we're asking them for half of that with a movable wall between the two spaces. And so they'll be able to use the space just like we do. You know, you have a big meeting, you can reserve the meeting room, but that would become our meeting room. And this space would no longer be the meeting room. And so with the movable wall, you could open up to a fairly large space, or you can keep it closed and Smyrla can have their training space. And we're hoping that they will work with us on that. We've made this proposal to them, and they've got to talk to their board and look at the MOU. And, you know, it's quite a bit of work to think whether that's possible, but that would be ideal because it's going to allow us, if that happens, to open up this space, and it's all going to become part of the library.
So having that large room dividable would offer us more flexibility like we have at Leonardtown and Lexington Park?
Well, it will allow a larger meeting space, but the primary reason for it is it's going to ensure that Smyrla has their space that they need, that we have space as well. And the ability to open it up, I think, just means if Smyrla ever has something large they have to do, it gives them flexibility. So I think it's more just how do we work with Smyrla to ensure that their space requirements are met and still expand the library, because we don't think with, even if we got 2 million, we'd have 7.5 million. We don't think we'd have the money to go out or the money to go up. It would be very expensive to do either of those things. But again, you know, I'm not the architect, so when she or he comes along, they will be able to do quite a bit of imagining here. But our hope is that, as I say, this space will get open. The computer closet is not movable. It's a very small area, however. So a lot of this sort of right here is all going to come down. It's all going to open up into the library. So it'll be much more open. Where there's kind of a green slash drawn, that would become the customer service desk. And all that area right now out there in the library would be open. We are asking for a little bit more Smyrla territory. You can see a kind of a blue line with one room delineated off. The other green line that's at the bottom left, if we cannot work out with Smyrla to have that space, then we would be moving the meeting room and still have this open from the new lobby out into the library. So that's kind of where we are as a start. It's all tentative, and we're waiting for, an architect to be hired. But we will, as that process happens, involve SMERLA in all those discussions. And we hope with $7.5 million, call it, to have a lovely new space. Certainly, we'll be looking to see, could we put a makerspace in here? What is currently some staff areas will become quiet study rooms. So we really want to make this space much more suitable as a 21st century facility.
So, couple questions. You say 7.5, so you're asking the state of Maryland for 2 million in 27,
Fiscal year 28.
28, and what's the other 5.5 million from the
The
county?
county has, in fiscal year 28, has $5.5 million set aside in their capital funds.
It's all 28.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And then, the yellow line, are you anticipating going from the lobby, the new lobby? Like, where's the entrance into the library, basically?
Yeah. Mhm.
Is that the yellow line?
Yeah, that's going to be the entrance to the library proper there. You want a space cut off from the lobby so that there can be people out there, like, right before we open. But that that's going to be the official entrance to the library there, yes.
John, when four of us came up here a few months back for that training session, we were in the space that is now partially outlined in blue. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, sometimes SMERLA holds trainings that for the folks from all three systems. So that room is sometimes filled.
Is that the room that the whole back end was full of computers on desks?
Yes. And it has a kitchen area.
Mhm.
I think that the counter.
Thank you.
So are we adding square footage to hall?
If we are able to work the meeting room arrangement, then we'll be adding that space. We've asked for a little bit, that one room that's kind of got the blue line, but we are concerned that once, and we're certainly adding space by encapsulating the front area here, the little front courtyard.
Mhm.
But we don't think that, given the topography outside, that it's going to be easy for us to expand the footprint for 7.5 million.
No.
And if you start getting a lot more than that, it's almost makes more sense to go to 12 million and build a new library. So I don't think
what's-
we'll be able to, other than this front courtyard area and possibly the meeting room, expand it for $7.5 million.
Sort
What's
of
the square footage right now?
About 10,000 square feet.
And what's Leonardtown?
Leonardtown is about 2,700. It was supposed to be 30,000, but we did some value engineering and cut a swath out. So it's like 2,750 square feet. And
Leonardtown.
Lexington Park is 25,000.
Leonardtown is 27,000.
Yeah.
Oh.
27,000, like 250 square feet.
That's just our side, not counting the other.
Not the senior center. No, that's our space. It does include the lobby, but yeah. And Lexington Park is 25.
As we get deeper into this, it's my understanding that the State Highway Department is going to try and untangle that mess, that little stretch coming across the median so you can make a left. I don't know how they're going to do that, but I would hope that we're part of knowing how they're going to do that and how it might impact entrances or exits for us.
Are you talking about when you come up north on 5 and make the left, past that gas station?
Yeah, you have a 6-car pileup there.
Yes, yes.
Some of you probably experienced that this morning. I did.
What sort of community outreach that we did with Leonardtown, we want that new building we want to duplicate here? And there any lessons learned from their previous community outreach?
Well, we will certainly be having meetings where once we have an architect in place, and start to see plans where we'll reach out to the community and say, all right, come see what we're planning on doing. And we do, solicit community input on what it will look like. Lessons learned, they want a lot more than we can afford, generally speaking. So I would say that we will definitely be involving the community in the planning and what would you like your library to look like? I think people will be excited by the prospect of a more open library, of refurbishing, and we'll probably be thinking about future sustainability as we do this. For example, I would imagine we're going to have laptops that people can check out as opposed to having just computer banks sitting there. It kind of, what are some trends in libraries? It'd be a chance to experiment with some of that.
Although this building is what, 40 years old?
Yeah,
It was built as a library as opposed to being built as an armory.
yeah. So it is showing its age in terms of its functionality. And that's a good thing because in the process of getting state grants, the trick is to make it look as bad as you can. With the armory, it was really easy to make it look really, really bad. All I had to do is take a picture of the main electrical board with the water leak above it. What could go wrong? Um, so it was really easy to make the armory look very, very bad. This is not terrible, but I'm sure there's ways we'll be able to say, boy, state, we really could use some money.
Is it any part of your vision that the new project will include solar or geothermal?
Unfortunately, we will not be able to afford that.
No grants for that as an add-on?
We've tried solar grants and not been successful. I certainly would not be averse to trying it, but for the amount of money we have, you simply won't be able to do that. We looked at it for Leonardtown, and when you're having to value engineer and reduce the size of the building, then adding that on suddenly isn't something that you're thinking of. I'd love to do it. I think that you can, for example, have displays where people see the amount of power that comes in, and it's very educational as well as, and it so fits the library mission in any number of ways. But so at my home, I basically have no electric bill. Got rid of the oil heater, put in solar, and yeah, I'm paying off the solar, but that's less than having the electric bill with the oil heat was. So I think it would be a great thing, and we'll certainly look at it. It would have to be a grant.
And the kinds of thing we're looking for, like canopies for the parking lot with the solar panels.
We've looked at that for Lexington Park and applied twice. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get the money. But even if it were just building top, and power the building itself. But a canopy out there with solar on top of it does have advantages for, customers. It gives them protection from their cars, protection from the sun and rain, and them protection as they're coming in.
Yeah, I've seen 2 or 3 of them.
I was at a recent commissioners meeting and it was kind of a free-for-all. And the first gentleman up was an elderly guy and he walked with a walker and a cane. Got to the mic and lit into the commissioners for not having enough handicap parking places at Leonardtown. So as we go forward, I think we need to be very conscious that frankly, you can't have too many.
Well, we've been talking with him for a year now,
You know him.
and there are more parking spaces that are handicap dedicated at Leonardtown than are required. He simply wants more. He wanted to take the garden out and make it all handicap parking. So basically what's happened is he went to county legal, he went to us, he went to the senior center, he went to the county executive, and he's not getting anywhere. So now he's talking to the commissioners. I will say that we gave a definite no to taking out the garden. And he talked to the garden people and changed his mind about that. We are talking with the county about possibly having some temporary handicap spaces that are close to where the current ones are, basically right across the way and closer to the door. That would be temporary from 9 to 2, and that would not be handicap parking at other times. Our concern is that we have customers who may not be officially eligible to have a handicap parking sticker, but still have limited mobility. They need a close space. We have people with strollers. They need a close space. I frankly think that he has been unreasonable in his demands and they have not been met, but we're trying.
Hey, well, let's not confuse, we met the legal standard with the other side of the coin, which is we were able to accommodate the demand.
Yeah. Well, just remember too, that if you go to Lexington, the Leonardtown Library, half the time there's 1 or 2, maybe 3 handicap parking spaces used, and this huge swath of them that are they're not used. There's a certain period of high demand, so that's what we're trying to work on.
Okay.
It doesn't make any sense to have 15 handicapped places and have 3 of them used on a regular basis. Anything else about Charlotte Hall?
What, I guess you could say, what exactly is in the RFP? Is he coming up with drawings? Does it include everything interior? You know, are we talking about lighting, HVAC, carpeting, design?
It will not have to have,
Moving walls and those kind of things? Is it?
yes, it
Okay.
will, it will be everything.
Comprehensive
Yeah,
design.
yeah. So it will not have to include an HVA system. My understanding from the county is they're putting in a new one. So it would be able to accommodate that new system, and it would not have to be part of that, which is good because it would be very expensive. But yes, everything else is kind of on the drawing board, and it will just depend on what we can do. But certainly we'd like new shelving that is lower without losing the collection size. You can have lower shelving and just have more efficient use there, a different layout. So I think that, quiet study spaces, we've heard high demand for. So it's going to be comprehensive and we really want to look at everything.
Then does he provide an estimate of the cost of his design?
Yes. So one thing we definitely have to have is a cost estimate and a proposed construction schedule, and the architect can provide both of those. Because when we apply for the state grant, and I've sat on that committee 5 times, plus we got money for Leonardtown, you have to have those in place. It really have to look like you've got everything absolutely organized and ready to go if you're going to get money. It's a very competitive process. So we will have everything ready to go.
And what is your best guess for downtime for the branch once the work starts?
Well, we are going to be working on that. My hope is that we could set aside this space as it exists and have this serve as a temporary library with a couple of computer stations and reserve pickup here.
This room.
Yeah, this room, and then build around it. But we'll have an architect help us with that. We don't want to close the facility completely, but we also have to remember that there's construction dust, there's, the need to wear hard hats. So we'll have to plan that pretty carefully. But my initial hope right now, as I say, we'll use this as a staging space and people can get their materials. And then, when the time comes, we might be able to use the new lobby for that and do the rest of this.
Thinking leapfrogging.
Yeah, that's kind of the plan. So we will see how that all works out. Well, the 26 budget update I've already actually given you, and it's just fantastic news in a very difficult year. Thank you again to all our supporters and the county commissioners. What is a board report to the county? So Judith, you noted that we didn't have reports for the library on the board site. Well, there's a reason for that. I'm going to just pass this around. This is what I prepare each year for the museum board. So it's not a report on what the museum does. What the county wants is a report on what the board does. So it's not a library report up there. Now, we don't have to submit one at all. And I don't have to submit one for the Department of Social Services board either. I sometimes do a draft of one and send it in and they'll post it. But those are considered not to be official like county boards like the museum board is. So what they want for their boards, commissions, and whatnot report is something like this, a report on what this board's activities have been. Now, for a couple years there, we just put up the library one. I sent Diane Gleisner with the county, I sent all our annual reports from the library to her. So fine with me if you want to use those as your board report, but they're kind of officially looking for something that is your activities. And the library report doesn't really have board activities in it. So do you want to have something like this?
The county's asking for a board report.
Yeah, on that site, that's what it is.
Which site?
On that boards commissions site,
Okay.
yeah,
Has this always been a requirement? I mean, I haven't.
it's not a
seen this-
requirement to us.
Okay. No, I read that as, I thought it said annual report. And
It's-
where you looked for if you went and looked for this application for the board position.
Yeah, it's the boards and commissions
you click
page.
down in the head. I thought it said annual reports, but it might have said board reports. I'm not sure. And I said the last one was like 2022.
Yeah,
So my email to Diane was, hey, we need to update, we need to bring in all the annual reports. I think they should be there, the annual reports.
But-
'Cause when
but-
I interviewed for this job, that's the first thing I did was go look at the annual report.
well,
and see
but
what it
this is what they ask from their official boards.
But not
is-
us.
Not us. We don't have to post anything. Now, we have on the library website all the annual reports posted. And if you want to have the annual reports from the library posted there as your contribution, I'm sure the county won't mind. They don't require it, so.
They already have some, but the question is, there were several, but the last one was in 22. So they had been posted for some time and then
It's
stopped.
20 and 21.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was years.
I send them to the county, so I don't know why. It's just that they don't require us to do it, so they don't, believe me, if I don't have that done for them in January, they start pestering. So it's,
I
yeah,
thought you said they don't require the library to do that.
they don't.
So why are they pestering you for it?
It's for the museum.
Oh, okay. So no, if we're posting reports to the board website, then it should be up to date. We should have the latest one up there or not post them at all.
So,
That was I'm not interested in doing an additional report. We do an annual report, which is very comprehensive.
yeah,
I don't think we
but,
need anything
so what I'm
extra.
saying is what they want on that site is a report of the board's activities, not the library. So for example, in the museum board, that's what they see. It's what our board did. It's not a museum annual report. So if you want we don't have to do it at all. So if you want the library annual report to be up there as that's fine. Because we don't have to do it all, I'm sure they'll accept it. And I did send all the reports to Diane, or you just don't have to do it at all. But so what I'm hearing is you don't want to do a separate board report.
No, I'm interested in that. I wonder if Diane could post the link to our website where we have our annual reports posted.
The easiest way to do
And
it.
she could just say, library annual reports, click here, and it takes us to our website.
Yeah, I'm sure
And
that's
then
not
you
going to be a
don't have
problem
do
at all.
it twice.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Be happy with that.
I will ask her to do that.
That way you don't have the document duplicate in two places and
Yeah.
we have control over updating it.
And yeah, you don't have to remember to do it. So, yeah.
Hey, shall we press through? Would you like a short break?
No, I'm good.
All right, I do have some action items for you. The first is an inclement weather policy update. And this is because of new state standards that they have. Doing here. Where'd you go? There. The inclement weather update is the part that's in red and blue, and it looks like this. We're just asking to add that the mobile library may close due to adverse weather conditions such as, but not limited to, extreme temperatures, dense fog, or storm conditions. So we'd want to add that to the policy.
This is following on the heat stress standard that the
I'll talk about those in a second.
Okay.
But that's just sort of like, that's been kind of our experience, is that if it's 98 degrees and 98% humidity out there, the mobile library is awfully uncomfortable to be out on the road, present programs, and it's a huge aluminum structure. Keeping it cool can be difficult.
So I move to approve this update to the inclement weather policy.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the emergency closings, we just want to add to that. And this is where we do bring in Maryland heat stress standards. And I've given you a summary of those. I suspect, especially with last summer's hot weather, that people are particularly concerned about the possibility of people having very difficult times, especially working outside. So to our emergency closings, we just want to add that if the mobile library is closed for an emergency, that the employees work at the Leonardtown location, and who can make that decision about the mobile library closing. Then we would also add Maryland heat stress standards to our policy and talk about COMAR 9, 12, 32. So basically, when the heat index reaches or exceeds 90 degrees Fahrenheit, we will implement high heat procedures, which include mandatory rest periods or alternative cooling and control measures, and mandatory employee monitoring is required by the state.
We just had safety training at work covering this very policy.
Yeah, and at Smyrla, you know, you have so many employees who will be out when it's really hot. So I'm sure they had people specific like that in mind when they were doing these.
So I see that the last two sentences of that paragraph on the Maryland heat stress standards are a direct quote from the standards.
Mhm.
I would suggest revising it slightly with the punctuation so that as outlined in COMAR 9.12.32 : open quote, and then just do a direct quote of those two sentences and end with a closed quotation marks, just to make it clear that that language is not coming from the library, but that we're directly quoting the standards.
I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
Okay.
Does the mobile library have provision for carrying water?
Yes.
Sorry to question, is this refer to only outside temperatures? Would this refer?
No, it's
to
also internal.
in the building? It
um,
doesn't say, so.
We
it
have had
applies to anywhere.
times in this building when the HVAC system failed and it got to be 85 degrees inside. And the heat index was severe enough that we went ahead and closed the library. So it is also for inside. With any luck, you won't see too many periods where inside where it gets above the heat index. But if you're 82 degrees and it's 80% humidity, you're darn close.
So it doesn't say close if the temperature is over 90 degrees. It says give them rest breaks. But we want that option. Do we have that?
Yes, elsewhere in the policy, it does talk about weather, heat-related things. It's just not right here. Because
Judith,
it's not
This is
related to
Bo-
closing.
I mean, it actually does
Judith,
say it's necessary to close the library due to an emergency. And I think I would say if your air conditioning failed, I would consider that an emergency. In July or August.
Yeah, we do monitor the temperature then, and we do close at a certain point. Another primary thing is that if you don't have public restrooms, you have to close your building.
Running
So,
water.
yeah,
You don't
yeah.
have water, you have to close, yeah. Okay.
On the heat stress page, is there a time limit for keeping, I'm in the bottom of the right-hand column, time limit for keeping the records?
What records, please?
The ones we're required to keep.
Oh,
The training records? To maintain for 1
Training
year?
records.
might be a
shall
blended
be
question. Do we have a,
maintained.
how long do we
Oh,
keep
there it is.
training records?
It's in there.
But
For 1
last-
year.
the
Okay.
last sentence, yes.
Never mind, Belinda.
we,
I'm sorry.
we
Say-
do keep them. Can they hear us?
We found the answer.
So we'll be training people on this
Yes, it
every
might.
year, basically.
So can I make a motion to approve these changes to the emergency closing policy with the amendment of putting direct quotation marks around the last 2 sentences in the last paragraph and a colon after the Comar citation?
I second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The next is the personal appearance policy, which has an addition, employees doing outreach outdoors in 80-degree plus weather may wear shorts, and then it stipulates that shorts may not be short shorts.
This is partly to bring us up to the fact that we have a mobile library and
Yes,
doing a
yeah,
lot more outreach.
yeah. And well, people are outside doing outreach in summertime more than usual, but we do also have programs in the park occasionally, and it would apply to basically all employees. So I ask that you approve that.
Move to approve the personal appearance regulations as presented.
Any discussion?
So this sentence about shorts length, I'm confused about what that means. So does that mean if your hand is at your knee, at the top of your hand is how far the shorts have to go?
Width.
Your width.
Right?
Yeah, you basically, they're not going to be short shorts is what we're stipulating.
I mean, do we need that sentence?
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
yes, we do.
Vocal yeses from the peanut
Daughters like
gallery.
Gloria.
I know.
Have you seen the shorts these days?
Okay, are we prepared to enforce this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
You're hearing my colleagues in the background. Yes.
I'm just, the next bullet point says no revealing clothing. Doesn't that cover what we're talking about?
No.
You have to be very specific with our staff. You have to give them guidelines
Okay.
or they will question it.
It cannot be vague. It must be specific.
All right. Belinda and Marianne have entered the chat. Okay.
I do have a question about the next to the last bullet point. Only St. Mary's County Library T-shirts with current logo. So you can't wear previous, I mean, I'm wearing the T-shirt with the current logo, but, so you couldn't wear previous ones that are from the library?
How long has the current logo been in place?
Okay.
The current
well-
logo for quite a while, but so at least since 2018 or 2019. So the previous ones are probably worn out, but we want to make sure that our branding is remains consistent.
So-
So that's why we ask that
So
it's
you
only
can
the current
wear
logo.
A T-shirt from a past year, it will have the current logo on it, but if you go back too far, it's the old logo and it's just a branding thing.
Okay.
But besides, who needs a T-shirt that's 6 years old? I say that and I've got a bunch of them, but
Any of our employees have like Land's End type of polo shirts with the logo here, or is that not what we do?
We do that. Yeah, some of our employees have chosen to purchase those.
You can buy it. The library doesn't provide it, but
Okay.
our employees do get them. Yeah. So have we had a vote on this?
Not yet.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
The next one is for a competitive bidding threshold. In the most recent General Assembly, HB 490 was enacted and will become law. And it stipulates that the county, St. Mary's County, this is not the library, now has a competitive bidding threshold of $50,000. So below that, they don't have to post to the state procurement system. So this sets the level at which they do that. Now, that's not to say below that you can't have a competitive bidding process. So for example, the desk at Charlotte Hall, because we're going to be renovating, we've drawn back from doing a new desk just to have the current desk set up so that it will better suit accessibility standards. Currently, it doesn't at all. So the cost of that is going to be less than $15,000. So we don't have to put it on the state bidding system. But we got competitive bids. We asked around. So you can still do that. This is just the amount at which you then are required to post to the state procurement system. So I would like the library to have the same threshold as the state. And that's what this policy says, basically.
You mean the county?
Yeah, if the county has that, we'll have that. I'd like the library to have the same as the county.
So does this second paragraph mean that we'll need to develop another policy or process about how to do competitive bidding officially?
No, we already have that.
We already have that.
We don't have a process.
well-
It's really thin. We don't have a process. It says RFQs over $15,000. And they mentioned small purchases. Frankly, I think it's contradictory in places. This came up when we went through this whole
But
thing last year about,
But yeah,
we
but
don't,
we
we don't have a process for how these things are done. For example, it says do an RFQ if it's $15,000 over. That's it. It doesn't say what to do with the RFQ. What if you don't get any bids? What if you get one bid? You need 3 bids? How is it reviewed? Who's going to review it?
well,
So we don't have sufficient process that's documented for how we're going to do this. And so the law says, and this is just something we've needed to do, you need a competitive bidding process. So to me, it's something that needs to be done anyway, but we would definitely need a procurement process set out for every size purchase that we're going to do that would specify things like deadlines and how many levels of review do you need? Like I said, what if you don't get bids? Those kind of situations. So it's kind of standard. I don't know what the county has. I think the law says, this law says, the same thing, establish a competitive bidding process for awarding contracts. Require a bond in connection with a contract regardless of the amount. If no bids are submitted in response to a request for bids, obtain services or supplies in a manner that the county commissioners consider appropriate. So this is definitely geared towards the counties. And then they put in a special line. This law only applies to St. Mary's County. I don't know what the history is behind it, but it was St. Mary's County only bumps it up to 50,000 instead of 15. I imagine they were tired of doing biddings for small little things constantly.
I'm sure that is the case because it's a laborious
Yeah,
process.
and they have a $300 million budget and we have, a $5 million budget. So Yeah, I think, if you're going to tackle this procurement issue, we need to tackle the whole thing and get ourselves a documented process that's going to protect us.
Well, just to remind you, last March and last April in 2024, documents were brought forward but were never voted in. So I think that following the county's amount is good. And my understanding from you, Director, personally, even though the policy was not officially enacted, is that over the threshold amount, we will put it into the state bidding process. So that I think, and I've been doing that, when we've had, the two that were definitely over that amount, we did submit for, competitive bids in the Emma system. So for me, what I'd like to see is, can we have the 50,000 to go to Emma? Because for something smaller, in many cases, we're not going to get a lot of bids on Emma in any case.
Aren't we working now on a $15,000 limit? Isn't that what Emma calls for?
Yeah, but we can set an exception because we're a constituent part of the county.
No, we're a state agency.
No, we're not a state agency. We're considered a constituent part of St. Mary's County. That's what it says you'll recall it says in the audit, and that's what we're considered. And our primary funding comes from the county.
But I think the state, I have an email from the state saying, as far as procurement is considered, we are a state agency and we follow state rules, not county rules. I do have that email somewhere. So my concern is that we don't violate state laws if those are what in fact apply to us. And I think that might be a decision we would have to research. So we're already complying with this because we're at the $15,000 level. So we're already in compliance with this. That would be my concern, is they see us as needing to comply with the state, not the county. And I don't want to get us in a position of violating that until we know for certain. And we've had such great success. I don't think we need to be overly burdensome on the procurement process, but we've seen great success in 2 or 3 contracts already at that $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 level. Yay, waste management, right?
Well, waste management was not, that wasn't done. That was a different matter entirely.
But it was taken on because we recognized we had these contracts that we needed to review on a regular basis. Like the other thing that our policy doesn't say, it doesn't say how often to review contracts. And we did have that discussion. I don't know if it was a vote to do a 3-year cycle. I think that was more of a tasking. And those things should be memorialized in procedures. It does say, get RFPs and competitive, but doesn't say how often. So, and we've seen that we needed to kind of clean that up. So my recommendation would be to research further and see which law applies to us if we're under the state, which I think we are. That probably be the argument, or if we're under the county. And then if we were to take this on, we need to rewrite that whole 2 pages on procurement policy and make it comprehensive. Again, so we want to cover ourselves, make sure we're doing it right, that we're being fair to everybody, that there's not inconsistencies on how we're procuring goods and services, and that it's just good management practices going forward. We've had great results in the last year. I think we need to push forward on this. And if those documents, I kind of remember that, and
Yeah,
we need to bring those back to
we still
life
have
and-
them.
and
We
review
still
those again.
have
Yeah.
them. Yeah. All right. Well, I will withdraw this, but I would at some point like to talk to you about how successful these bidding processes actually have been. So we'll just leave it at that. That's what.
So is that tabled for now?
Yeah, we're not going to move forward with that. That is what I had for your action items. So move to old trustee business.
All right. The first item is OPEB fund actions.
And yes, everybody has signed the conflict of interest forms, and those are saved in the board files.
I don't have anything new. We got the certificate signed Monday and uploaded to Vanguard, so I don't have any other news besides that.
Oh, okay. I see that we had of the expenses, the final payment to Asset Strategies was in there.
So then,
Further under old trustee business?
well, so just with the OPEB piece, right? Once it gets into Vanguard, then phase one is in good shape. But then we need to have a broader conversation, right? About what's the long-term plan with this money? Where are we going with it?
That was my understanding.
Is that a conversation we want to start having?
Yeah, I'm open to. We made the decision on the 50/50 investment.
Mhm.
So the other 50%, we'll look at that in July and see how the market's doing. But I think the broader conversation is, where are we going with the funds? And as I've explained before, the money's languishing because we're not going to reach an 80% funding level the way we're going now. We may be doing better, perhaps we get a 10% gain every year on this, which would be fabulous, but it's not going to get us to the $3 and $4 million level that would fund this, that we could become a pay-go system. And the healthcare insurance costs are outstripping 10%. So we're not going to catch up unless we start paying into the fund and putting money into Vanguard that will help us to catch up. The other option is do nothing, as we've been doing, and do a pay-go, put it in the budget every year. But that's leaving taxpayer money sitting around without a purpose. This money doesn't have a purpose right now. We can do partial withdrawals and offset, instead of asking the county for $100,000 a year, ask them for $50,000 a year and start drawing it down. We can only use this money for that OPEB line. It can't go anywhere else. We can also change the terms of the benefits. We do not have to offer healthcare benefits or any benefits to retirees. I'm not saying deny them benefits. I'm saying, you could literally vote tomorrow to not give them retirement benefits anymore. But as Michael pointed out, there's very few people, and around 11 people on this system right now. It's a lot of work and a lot of investment for a small pool of people that I don't really see growing. Because although we have 75, 77 employees, not many of those actually retire from their library and carry health benefits into retirement.
It's about 72, but then it gets higher if we call substitutes employees, but they would not be eligible in any case.
But I
so
mean,
yeah.
I don't know if we've even added anybody in the last few years to the retirement system. I think we had somebody drop off, and
I know we did
So-
have a death a couple of years ago.
Yes, and
very, very few people that were managing this fund for it. They're worthy of it, and everybody deserves health insurance. But there are things you can do, start restricting it. One of the simplest things we could do is kind of close the gate. Any new employees, we do not offer retirement health benefits to, not retirement, but just the health benefits. So anybody else coming in the door, we no longer health benefits at retirement. Now, the impact of that I think would be very small because people may come in here in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, not really thinking about retirement, and they may never retire from the library. It doesn't leave them without health insurance because we know Obamacare and the Maryland Exchange offers anybody health insurance at retirement, and it's probably a better deal for them because it's income-based. So you pay based on your income. Lower incomes pay significantly less to free, to higher incomes pay more for the health insurance. And you can go on and buy your own health insurance whenever you choose. That would be a really simple answer. That would start to close our liability a little bit. And as people age out of the system or leave the library, there would be fewer and fewer people eligible for health insurance, and our liability would decrease then. You can also
okay,
just start, you can also
but,
do like one thing, like anybody less than 10 years, we no longer are going to offer you health insurance. And you could make the closure a little bit wider. So these are just options that we have.
well, we already don't to people who have less than 10 years. So I guess I'd say, here's what's going to happen is over time, everyone's going to pass away. And you've got all this money sitting there with no purpose. So I think it's problematic to shut it down. I also think that it's a great reward for somebody who does spend a career at St. Mary's County Library, and we've got a number of staff who are in the 20-year range. Do you really want to close that out for them? It is a great benefit. It's very good insurance. And if they've been here for 30 years, I think picking up, especially since there's a fund dedicated to it, it may not be growing, but it's not going to be particularly fair to employees to suddenly shut it down.
Well, I think Judith's point was to close it for future employees, not anyone who's currently here.
Yeah. And then, and you'll see then the population eligible becomes smaller and smaller.
Yeah, but
And if
then.
you're not,
what-
so I'm saying is under the 10-year thing is if you have less than 10 years,
Hmm.
you cannot sign up for health insurance in retirement. Not that they don't get it, but those people are now excluded from that benefit. So they know
Well,
or out
we-
that you're
we-
not going to have the option for health insurance from the library if you retire from the library.
We already don't pick up for people with less than 10 years.
No, you don't
Um,
understand me.
So.
If they have less than 10 years tenure on the library
Mhm.
and they go to 15, no, their doors close for them. That population can no longer sign up at any point in time for health insurance in retirement.
But here's what's going to happen is that eventually there's going to be nobody left.
Yes.
And you've got all this money sitting there dedicated for a purpose that no longer exists.
We can start spending down the money. We can spend down this money anytime we
You can
want
spend the
to.
money down now. I
What?
mean, you can spend the money down now.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm thinking we probably should. Because it depends. If we make this choice, then we start spending it down for the purpose for which it was invested.
I don't agree with that. I think that insurance is a benefit. Now, if you choose not to continue with what you have through the library and you choose to go out to ACA or some other option, that's up to you. But I think insurance is a perk and it's a benefit to a job.
Mhm, mhm.
That's one of the things that, I mean, I would look for if I'm getting a job. What kind of benefits do you have?
So we can,
And I think it's kind of bad to say, oh, well, now you've come in here, you've worked 15 years. Sorry about your luck.
Mhm.
No, and I don't think that's the proper explanation of that option. Let's pretend we say on January 1st of the coming year. That's the marker. Anybody hired after that, people we don't even know, but anybody hired after that will not, if they stay till retirement, be eligible to be in the program we have now.
Why do you want to deny a benefit to somebody?
Yeah,
They're
I
not even
understand.
on.
Doesn't matter. They could be.
Okay, we can keep the benefit and we need to pay for it. We need to put money into the OPEB account every year. And we put that forward before and the board has voted it down. The liability is outstripping our investment. We either have to invest in this program or don't carry the program. You can't have it both ways.
Well,
Money to give people health insurance. and retirement.
eventually it will grow. It's going to take a number of years,
It's
but
never going to catch up.
Well-
At 10% growth, it is never going to catch up with our liability.
well, what's the problem though?
The
Well-
cost of health insurance.
But
And we're so far behind the ball because we didn't invest for years. And the
there's
cost of
only
it-
two places to invest from. The materials are staff. Everything else is a set expense. We have talked before about the inadvisability of cutting what the library really does, which is serve the public. And that's because of the collection and that's because of the staff. There's no other source where we can fund this.
Well, I take issue with that because, and I don't mean to get this off on a different track, but I just want to shut down that notion. We're doing a whole lot of things at the library that are popular with the public, but they're not related to the collection.
Yes, the collection is one of the primary reasons the library exists.
That's right.
And we need to keep putting money into it.
All right, let's do that at the expense of,
Let's do that at the expense of 11 people who are in retirement and are being covered. No,
we're not even talking
the
about
public-
shutting anybody off who's
the
getting this.
public comes here for the collection, the programs, the staff. They don't come here for anything else. What do you think? They just come here for no reason? We need a good collection. We've got to continue funding that. We
I'm
need-
all in
So
favor of a
what do you
collection.
recommend? What is your solution? Anybody have another solution?
Continue pay go and try to build the fund, but not invest in it because we don't have a source to invest in it. We've asked the county for more money again and again, and they say, no, it looks fine to us. I don't know where you're going to find money to invest without taking it away from the two areas that are possible, which is staff. You can decrease staff. You can shut down the collection or invest less in the collection, but everything else is a set cost.
No, it isn't.
Sure. Well,
We don't,
what's
we
not
don't have to have
utilities?
maker spaces. That's not collection. It's not a set cost.
But it's for the public and it's what people come here for. It's programming. They
Well, are
like
we a
it.
library or are we a community center?
We're both those
We are a
things.
ping pong ball away from being the why. And that's where the money could come from. But nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about that. What we're talking about here in this option, and which nobody has voted on, but an option would be if you're in it, if you're eligible to be in it, you're fine. You're untouchable. But people we haven't met yet, people that don't even know that this is a library in St. Mary's County yet, because they don't live here, would not be effective as of a date yet to be determined.
So you're going to start paying the people who are eligible out of the fund now.
That's an option.
Well, but there's no, all right, so when everybody, excuse me, when everybody who's eligible dies, you've got all this money sitting there. What are you going to do with it? It was for retirement,
So.
health
here's-
benefits.
So currently we have a 10-year, correct?
A what?
I mean, they have to be invested 10 years. So we could also always change that to 15 years.
That's an option. That's exactly correct.
You can also, they pay, after retirement, the amount of money they pay for their health insurance depends on how many years they've served.
That is correct, Jeff.
And you could change that formula so they're paying a higher amount in retirement after they retire for their health insurance, and then our costs lower. So the $90,000 to $100,000 we have every year on that in our budget would be reduced somewhat, maybe $5,000 or $10,000. And there, you could take a multiple based approach by maybe making them pay more in retirement, putting some funding on it, closing the door to new employees. You could do multiple things that are going to reduce our liability. But John's right. There's nothing in our budget that is set. Everything in our budget is open to being cut or increased. There's nothing in here that we can't cut. Really, there's nothing. And other agencies have had to face that this
Please-
year.
please
The
point-
school board is cutting employees. Other agencies are cutting employees or not filling vacancies.
We
which
are
means
already
option.
bare
It's-
bones
it's-
staffed.
It's an option. So you want to know what to do about it. You have to look at, everybody is in this situation right now with tough choices, and we have to make choices.
Well, we just got some more money and taking away staff. I go out there in the public and I hear nothing but how great our staff are. And you heard it at that public budget hearing. Everywhere I go, the staff is so friendly. You're going to cut our staff. That's the primary reason why we are as popular as we are. You're going to cut our budget for materials? No, I don't think so. Let's go ahead and take that to the public and see what they say. Oh, we're going to go ahead and start
Okay,
putting.
you know what? I think we need to all take a breath for a minute and let's be cool about this. I think we have an important responsibility here to be good stewards of the library and the library funds. Everyone in this room 100% agrees on how essential the collection is, how essential the amazing employees are, and the incredible work that's happening here. I think that the challenge is with this OPEB thing, it does seem like we're in this weird no man's land where we want to offer this incredible benefit to employees who have richly earned it, but it doesn't seem like we're in a place where that's financially viable in the long term. And so we're kind of stuck here in this middle ground, and there's not an easy self-evident solution. And so I do think it's important that we kind of think about ways we can sort of get out of this current place and into a more sustainable ground. And so one question that I have is, as we approach this change of the fiscal year, do we anticipate contributing anything to the OPEB principal from any money we might have left over in FY '25, or do we think the FY '26 budget will have room for it? I'm guessing the answer is no, but do folks have thoughts about that?
Well, I don't think there's going to be anything less from fiscal year 25. I think we probably will dip into that $100,000 that we anticipated,
Yeah.
which would mean that ultimately we are not ahead for the year. This year we did put we have $8,000 more, but you've passed a policy about kind of what our unexpended fund balance should be, and we've agreed that it should be at least 1 month. And if it gets over 2 months, then that money could go into this. I don't anticipate ever seeing, that.
Right.
A couple of
Um,
questions I had were, how many retirees do we have that don't take advantage of the OPEB?
That don't take advantage of it. I don't know that number. We have, Belinda, are you still there? What's the
Yes,
exact,
yes, I am.
what's the exact number of people in the OPEB right now?
9.
9. So we have
And-
9, yeah. So we have,
And several of them only take dental, which is a lot less. And so as far as how many retirees we have that don't communicate or rotate part of OPEB, there are, I don't have a past for too far back, but I know that we just retired 3 that don't take part in it. And of those 9, there are some who just do life insurance, which is 95 cents a month.
So, I mean, if you had to say an estimate, Belinda, like if 100 people retired, like a percentage wise, do 1/3 of them take the benefits, 10%, 90%?
I would say that less than a third, maybe 25 to 20%. And just to be clear, we also have employees, for example, we have an employee, a past employee who just put in for retirement. And so that employee is one of our retirees, but they haven't worked for us for 6 years. So they aren't eligible to come onto our health insurance. So only an employee who retires from us directly, but we still have employees who are our employees who have retired. So they left us and waited until they got into the retirement age.
Might be something we want to look at.
You mean it kicks in like at 65 or something, eligibility?
Just, yeah, as soon as they hit the Medicare too, their costs drop for that if they're on health insurance. And we are still only paying a percentage.
Yeah.
So, and it depends on how long they are employed with us. We follow the county's rules on that. Some of them, we have employees who worked for us for 40 to 50 years. So we are paying 85% of those employees' health insurance. But a lot of them, we're only paying 50% or 25%.
So this employee's been gone from the library for 6 years and they've now contacted you and said, I want to enroll in the health insurance?
No, they are not enrolling because they are not eligible to enroll in the health insurance because they did not retire from us. But they are still one of our employees retiring in the retirement system. So the state retirement system contacted me to let me know that they had retired and are pulling for their retirement.
but they're not in the OPEB fund, correct?
They are not in the OPEB because they can't be because they did not
You have to retire
leave with
from the
us.
library. It's very few people who actually retire from the library.
Well, that's what I'm saying is how many people would actually be denied this benefit if we started to close the gate? And 25% of people that even retire from the library actually pick up their health, life, or dental benefits. So it's a pretty low number.
It
I
is a
understand
low.
your concern, but I don't feel like we're leaving people without health insurance.
You are.
There
It's,
is- No, in
you're
Maryland.
going to
there's
leave
such thing.
some people without health insurance if you try to take it away. Because these people have worked with us for 20 plus years with and this is one of our benefits. And also, again, we follow the county and the state on this. This is what being in state retirement, this is one of the options.
Now,
And we
not
follow
talking
the
about- we're not
county's
talking- again,
rules.
We're not talking about current employees, but say new hires that come in.
I know,
And then
but that
they
is one
do-
of the
They can go
bonuses
on the
we
Maryland
offer.
Exchange and buy health insurance. Anybody
We
can.
we don't know how long that will be there.
But it is a benefit through the state. If you would invest, well, it used to be, I'm not sure what it is now. If you were vested, what is it, Belinda, 10 years?
Yes, it's 10 years. You have to work for us for 10 years before you're even vested. And then you have to work for us for more than 20 to get any kind of percentage paid by us for the health insurance.
And I
These are
don't
long-term
necessarily,
employees.
for an employee who comes in tomorrow and works 20 years, I don't necessarily want to be taking this benefit away from them.
Well, given that we haven't set a date, in your example, they'd still have the benefit.
So, I mean, what's
That's
the
just for the
solution?
hot person we hire tomorrow. I want all the people we hire in the next 5, 10, and 15 years to have the option of health insurance if they stay with the St. Mary's County Library.
Well, here's the problem, Belinda, and it's already been stated by Judith very succinctly. It's going to cost us more and more out of pocket, and we are not going to grow the account. We've made some serious changes in it, but we're so far underwater, we're never going to see that be self-sustaining. So there's your dilemma. You
And
want to
we-
have the benefit, but you don't have the financial support for it.
And we have been paying this for the entire time, and we will continue to manage to pay for it. I manage this budget, and this budget, I make sure is covered. And I make sure that our current employees get what we can, and I make sure our past employees are covered, and I make sure that all of our programs get as much as we can. And I work this budget every year to make sure that we are doing what we need to provide to our employees and our customers. So taking something away because you want 10,000 extra dollars in the budget isn't a good idea. Because that's what it costs, 10 to 15,000 total for those retirees a month. So you're taking a benefit away that is part of who we are.
Well, hypothetically, what if we said, let's not take the benefit away, let's take PAYGO away and start drawing down on the fund? If it's
That's fine.
costing us 10,000 a month, based on where we are now, I think that is 120 months.
Michael and I have always been clear that that is fine if that is what the board wants to do. But it doesn't mean that when OPEB goes away, we won't go back to PAYGO.
It would if that's a benefit that gets taken away.
Then we would go back to PAYGO.
I'm just saying, at the present rate of expenses, what we have in the OPEB account right now would last us, I think, 120 months. What's that, 10 years?
And then at the end of 10 years, we would go back to PAYGO.
Or not? That's up for another board to decide.
How did
Yes.
Charles and Calvert handle their OPEBs?
I don't know that they've got one.
I know Smyrla has one.
How's it funded?
There's a lot of, there's a lot of libraries that don't even have an OPEB at all,
And that's certainly an option.
but they do PAYGO.
Yes, right.
So I have no problem if what you would like to do with this is say, okay, we're never going to make it self-sustaining. So let's start drawing down on it and use this money to pay the PAYGO. At the end, some board will have to say whether to continue the benefit or not, but that would give the library, call it, what, $100,000 a year that we would not be spending PAYGO, and that we could put towards other things. Is that what you want to do, or pay part of it? I mean, I don't have any trouble with you going ahead and saying, fine, we're going to start using the money.
Probably the first year we'd have the benefit of the 100,000. And after that, no more because the county would see what we're doing, which is fine. We're transparent, right? And they're saying, like this, like in 26, we drew out $100,000 and put it in this line item for OPEB. At the end of the year, we have $100,000 left on that line item, right? Because we now have 200,000 in there. But the next year after that, the county's going to go, oh, okay, you don't need this money anymore because you're self-funding it.
All right.
So
They don't give us the money specifically for that. They give us,
don't they look at our numbers at the end of the year, what we did last year and what we were asking for the budget year and the future year?
no,
they're
all
looking at-
they look at is a total. They don't look at each budget line.
Okay.
So,
Judith, and just to be clear, they've never given us enough to cover both the salaries and the health insurance. And that is a group line item when we do request money is personal services, and that includes health insurance and the salaries. They've never given us enough to cover an increase or even the coverage of the health insurance. So
Did
we
you say
make
was
it work.
One line item? It's one line item? Salaries and benefits is one item, that's all they see?
yeah. I mean, they
It's
don't
grouped
see
together.
They don't
It's
see a
not-
breakdown of, so they see for each branch what the totals are. So, but they don't see a line item basis. And when they give us money, they don't necessarily stipulate what it's for. Sometimes they do, but they really just say, here's your money. You can do with that what you want. So you could, if you want to start paying out of this fund, the ongoing costs, you would have nothing for an OPEB line for the library, basically. You wouldn't have $100,000 there. We'd just say, fine, we've got money that we're putting into furniture and equipment or something like that. And then the money would come straight out of the fund.
Well, no, we have to be careful. It has to come into an OPEB line item legally. We have to
Yes.
show that if we're taking, this is an OPEB account established for retiree benefits, and we have to show legally that we're spending it on OPEB expenses. So there has
Yes.
to be a direct correlation from Vanguard into this line item.
Yes,
And
we
always
would do
have to show
that.
Yeah,
Yes, we
Again-
would do that.
right. And like the first year, if we were doing 26, we'd have double the amount in that
No.
line item.
No, we wouldn't, because I would account for the fact that you're going to do that.
Well, kind of initially we would, because that's, unless we change the way we vote on the budget, which we
if
don't have
you-
yet.
If you made this decision for FY26, let's just say that,
Yeah.
you're making this decision for FY26, then that line item is going to be a no-cost line item for our overall budget. Or I'm going to put in an income of the same amount from the OPEB. It'll offset itself one way or the other.
It's going
Yeah,
to be a
if we
wash.
decide this before July 1st or something, but I'm not sure that's going to happen, right? But if we get
Well,
it for
right.
July 1st, then it would show double. I don't know that we're going to get there before July 1st. So again, I'm just presenting options. If somebody has a better idea, I am open to it. I've been through this 6 ways to Sunday. If you have a different way you want to do it, I mean, chime in.
I think what we need to understand right now is this is just a recognition of the problem. There are some options and some we haven't thought of. Some of the options can be taken in combination. It doesn't have to be all A or all B. So we're not looking for a decision today, but this thing is out there and it's ugly, and we need to figure out how we're going to fix it or how we're going to pay for it. That simple. I'm
So
kind of
I
moving to
understand
your
what
point.
you're saying, John. And I will say that for the past 2 years, this is what you guys have been going around in circles on. We have said that we can't fund it, especially not at the levels in which you want us to. The only way to do that is to cut salaries, to cut people, and to cut books. That's all we can do. Or to cut out an entire library. If you want us to fund an OPEB at the rate that you think we should. We've also said that there was an expectation that this OPEB wasn't being funded, and it's always been that way since the county stopped giving us money for it, which was after the first few years. We've always said, in addition to that, that if you want to clear out the fund and just start paying from that fund and pay it down, we're fine with that too. But it is ultimately your decision on how that works. But taking away insurance is something that I don't agree with at all.
Terrible for morale, I think, for a lot of folks.
Yes.
Well, one of the options is if you're working here now, you're covered.
We are talking about our employees
that don't
forever.
offer health insurance in retirement. There are many, probably most small
Oh, sure.
employers.
It's a nice,
Do not
but
offer
it's a
it.
nice
It's
reason to
spend-
work for St. Mary's County Library, who does.
I mean, it's not unusual. It's not unheard of. It's not what we've been doing. And we're not talking about current employees, but future employees. But nobody seems to like that idea. But I'm putting out possibilities and ideas here. I'm leaning towards starting to spend it down. And then whenever it's spent down in 10 or 15 years, and let's say 10, let's say costs really go through the roof or something, or we have a lot of employees retire. I don't know if we have an aging population, Belinda, with our employees or not.
No, we don't.
And then in 10
Some of
in 10 years or something,
administration are
you
not
have to
spring
go-
chickens.
You have to go back to a pay-go system. At that time, it might be $200,000 a year instead of 100,000, and you have to be ready to absorb that bump. The reason is we kind of get out of the business of managing this trust and this money. It's not a bad thing, but I sense this board just doesn't have the stomach or the interest to fund it and manage it. And if we're not going to manage it with a purpose that's reachable, then it doesn't make sense to keep it.
I don't expect it to make a huge difference in the net, but now that we switched over to Vanguard, the question is, how much does that help us in terms of, since we're not paying asset strategies to manage, and then also putting money into managing the fund itself.
Okay, I'll take that
Asset-
one.
Asset strategy is 10,000 a year.
10,000 a year.
And then and it looks like the Vanguard Fund will do better than what we had before. But I guess the way to know that is to see how it performs for a few months.
Yeah. So we're not paying out the fees. And, we'd hope for better growth because their fees within the fund are smaller.
I don't think it's going to be
But,
matched.
we save money on, waste management. We budgeted for next year. Did we budget fully for waste management for next year in the 26? And now we're going to save $12,000.
But we will look and see, and you will see next month in the budget that's presented to you. I mean, so if you want to say, okay, we're saving $10,000 every year, we'll put $10,000 into the fund. I just don't know that it's going to make it grow fast enough to be an appreciable difference, but it would make a difference.
It would, but again, we're not going to get to that like 80% funded level. You probably would have to do 100,000 a year
Yes.
to get even in
So-
a reasonable amount of time, which is still more than 10 years away.
And
Put
Can
100,000
I-
here, it would take more than 10 years to get us to the
the
80%.
other problem you run into is that the fund is now worth slightly less than it was before COVID, when it was 1.6 million. And we've had two big hits since then. So I don't know that sustained growth is an option for it. Not
Can I-
unless you guarantee the market is going to go up and up and up and never go down.
Can I say that I think that you, as the board, need to make a decision either for this fiscal year in the next month of whether or not you want to just start paying out of the fund go. Or I say, if you don't want to do that, I say you wait and start this discussion again at the beginning of next year before we get to a budget, before we actually get our budget numbers, not the budget we're going to send to the county. And decide then if you want to see how Vanguard does and what those options are, and start paying out the OPEB on next fiscal year. Instead of trying to figure out whether you want to do it in the middle of the year, you either decide now or you hold it. See how Vanguard's doing, what you want to do, and you guys can have discussions about that and whether we make that decision for next fiscal year.
May I correct a misstatement that I heard? Um, our recently severed relationship with Asset Strategies was based on a percentage of the balance at the end of every calendar quarter. So while it may have been in the ten or $11,000 range of late, it's not staying there because, or it wouldn't stay there because as the balance increases, the cost increase. The percentage is fixed. The percentage 2 years ago was jumped up from 0.15 to 0.75% of the fund per year based on a quarterly billing. All right. So
Yeah, yeah.
that cost fluctuated and that's gone. Meanwhile, the cost of operating what they had proposed and what we were doing has internal costs, and we have dropped those down, I think probably by about, I'm going to say 70 or 80%, by going to the Vanguard Wellington Fund. So we have realized some savings by making this move. Now, we don't know which way the market's going to go today or tomorrow, but we do know that the history of markets in the United States has always been trending up. Are there setbacks from time to time? Yes, there are. You take those into account. But the long-term outlook for markets in America is up. The question is, we're so far behind the curve with the OPEB investments that we're never going to grow our way out with any reasonable compound interest figure.
That's right. It doesn't matter how well Vanguard does. If we made 15% a year, we're never going to grow to the point we need to be self-sustaining. So we can wait the year and see how Vanguard does. But that growth alone will never get us to where we need to be without putting money into the investment.
I agree with you, Judith. At this point, unless we get a windfall, we cannot fund that. And it would take multiple years to get to that point. But I do recommend that if you make this decision, you make it for the start of a fiscal year and not in the middle of a fiscal year. So you either do it for FY26 or you hold and do it for FY27 and wait to see what your move to Vanguard actually did.
Well, an issue would be that without this decision, we cannot prepare a budget for you for next month. We can't say, here's your budget, and then have you say, oh, now we're going to start paying it down. I mean, we could adjust quickly enough right then and there, but without knowing your intentions on this, we can't really say, all right, here's what we need to set aside for the OPEB or not set aside for the OPEB.
If we voted to pay it down, that would only be benefit to the 26 budget. We literally would be giving you money.
Yeah, so if you
that's
vote,
not
if
a
you
hard
voted
adjustment.
to pay it down to start with July of 2025, next fiscal year, then when we present a budget to you next June 13th, we would say, okay, here's your budget with that in place.
If we do agree to draw it down, I think my preference would be to include that for the planning, like starting at the beginning of fiscal 27. You know, we're about to start 26. So
Want to start 26.
so that would give us instead of trying to get it rushed through for the start of the fiscal year, which is about to start.
I don't think it's going to make any difference because it's already been pointed out that even if we put this into effect now, i.e. day one of the upcoming fiscal year, taking money from OPEB and reimbursing PAYGO.
I think they'd be relatively clean in terms of
Yeah.
We have had this conversation seemingly every month. Every time we talk about this, we sort of take 3 steps forward and then maybe 4 to 5 steps ahead, or you know what I mean? I am reluctant to sort of make this decision with only 5 of 7 of us present, I would really like input from Tressa and Sharon before we make that kind of decision. On the other hand, and I take Belinda's point about, I do think it makes sense to do this on a fiscal year cycle. But, I don't, I'm optimistic that we'll see some good growth over the next year, but I don't think it'll be enough growth to make a difference and
Yeah.
really swing things
Yeah.
towards one particular direction.
Yeah, I agree with Michael in the sense that I feel like I would do it if you make this decision for FY '26, but it seems like the smart thing to do is to wait because we're rushed now. We're rushed, we're throwing something out onto the floor and trying to come up with it. I think, and you have been discussing this for 2 years, so let's make sure that everybody's on the same page for FY '27.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't come here today intending to vote on this, really. I
Yeah.
think this is just a discussion.
Yeah.
And I think we all should stew about it some more, and look at the pros and cons of all these issues. And I'm okay with certainly not voting today. I don't necessarily think we have to tie it to the fiscal year. Again, we would literally be putting money into the coffers if we did this.
Right.
Which
It's a
is
good
not taking
thing.
money away. So
It's a
I'm
good
pretty
thing.
sure we can adjust to having more money. But didn't really intend to vote. And I do think it's important to have all 7 of us here.
Oh, yeah.
So,
definitely.
so we put a pin in it for now. Think about it. If you, again, anybody comes up with another brilliant solution to this problem, bring it on. Okay.
All right, old business. There we go.
Is there any other new business?
For myself, I was curious to know if we've gotten any feedback regarding the phase out of Hoopla. Oh.
Oh, okay, I guess I actually do have some old business. This is another investment. We talked about the Rudolph Fund and the intern fund last month. And again, I don't want to vote today, but we need to think about that money. What do we want to do with it? It's the same kind of situation. The intern fund is running out. And the Rudolph Fund has been sitting there not really being used. My thought is to dump most of the money into the intern fund to keep it self-sustaining in perpetuity and possibly even give them more money for interns or more hours or more interns. Because if we bump it up to 60 to 80,000 and you drew down 10%, that would be too much, right? 5%, it would be more than they're only using 3,000 a year now. And if we give them the option of taking out 5 if they wanted it, and then maybe taking the leftover money and putting it towards a book buy. I think it would be nice to have a book buy. That's just kind of my thoughts on it. Again, but I think we need to decide what to do with this money. Because one pot is sitting there not being used and the other pot is running out. So, and if the library has a preference, I think we'd like to hear maybe next month if there's something you'd like to see done with the money.
As far as we are concerned, supporting that intern is a great idea. And we, as we've told you before, we've now had 6 people who started off as interns and eventually became employees of the library. So we would like you to consider still funding intern positions.
That said, and I'm all for that, we're in a situation with how that money is working. It's not growing. It's in a bond fund. You don't buy bond funds or bonds for growth. You buy them for income. And so we need to rethink where it is positioned.
Well, that is board money. That is not library money. That is yours. So you make that decision, whatever you want to do with it. If you wish to put it into a growth fund, and that will help fund interns, then certainly, the library thinks that's a good idea.
Yeah, I definitely think we probably should move the money, but maybe next month, maybe June or July, bring it up and And I think we were gonna try to settle the OPEB money first and let me get my hands wrapped around that. And then go in to move the other money. And we could move it into Vanguard also. And that gives us some growth. Yeah, it's kind of foolish to let it sit there in a bond. So I think we do need to also tackle that. Yeah, it can't just sit there in a bond. It's a wasted opportunity.
Well, thank you for considering that because we do greatly value the interns and it is a growth pattern into the library.
Great.
Any further new trustee business?
I move we adjourn.
Well, just a quick updates. Next Tuesday, there will be another budget work session, but I don't anticipate the library will get any mention. Final budget approved on the 20th. Your Friends of the Library book sale, May 16th through 18th. The 16th, the Fridays for members, but then the other 2 days are wide open for coming out and buying books. So public, please come out and buy Friends of the Library books at the fairgrounds next weekend. And that's what I had for you. And we do need to go into a closed session.
That's right.
Does this need a home somewhere?
No, that's kind of what
We have a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn the open session.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning open session and moving into closed